Let's start with a little background on Glass House. So Glass House started in 2015 when you and Kyle formed the first investment fund, which eventually became the Glass House. Can you tell me a little bit about that story?
Yeah, sure. It's actually a pretty funny story. So back in 2015, I originally found what would be the genesis or the original seed of Glass House, which was a really nice farm in Carpinteria. Carpinteria is a part of Santa Barbara County, which is where we grow and where I live. I'm lucky enough to get to grow cannabis in my hometown of Santa Barbara, who would have thought Santa Barbara would be one of the spots that was a cannabis cultivation capital, but it is, and I'm sure lucky to be here. So found the first farm. It's a 150,000 square foot farm. Went into a Dutch farmer and basically said, "Hey, I want to buy your farm." It wasn't for sale. He thought we were nuts, but I probably thought he was ripping our face off. And at the time, given where things were, maybe he was a little bit, but we had a vision and a belief that we could grow high quality craft cannabis at scale, and that Santa Barbara was the spot to do it. And so Kyle and I met through that. He was a real estate guy by background, believed in cannabis. He was actually a former law enforcement officer after being a special ed teacher. And so he'd seen the drug war firsthand, and what he learned from that was it was bullshit, and he didn't want to support it, and he actively wanted to fight against it. And so he kind of put his real estate background and his anti-prohibition beliefs together, and we bought the farm and helped fundraise it as a private equity fund. Like, I mean, you're talking five people kind of thing, right? Not like some big Wall Street deal at the time. This is the early days of cannabis. Ordinances were new, taxes were new, Prop 64 hadn't even passed yet. It was Prop 215 medical days. We bought this farm, we started it up, and we liked how it was going, and we realized that we certainly didn't know everything to do, and maybe we knew more things that we not to do, and that's sometimes just as valuable. But we believed, and I think we're right, that we were at least on the front edge of that migration from kind of garages and warehouses and small things to more large scale service the state of California side of things. And then from that we went and bought the second farm, which is also in this same neighborhood. It's 355,000 square feet. So between the two is the 500,000 square feet of licensed and operational greenhouse that we have today.
Amazing. And that, as you mentioned, was the medical days in California.
Yeah.
So even pre-adult use. How was that transition? Pretty straightforward for you guys, or was it?
No, I don't think anything's straightforward in cannabis. Prop 215 had certainly, there's pros and cons to both, right? Like, so Prop 215 had a lot less regulations, but it also had a lot less clarity. So there was a whole bunch of things that in Prop 15, for example, 6 plants per patient or doctor's recommendation. So the entire structure of how we built things in the first greenhouse was a lot fewer but larger plants, so that we didn't have regulatory conflict of if we had 50,000 1-gallon pots, that means you'd have to have 9,000 patient recommendations. So instead we have 10,000 larger pots, right? That's not the most efficient way to grow, but it kept us compliant. Didn't have testing requirements, but that also meant that people were buying things that they didn't know what was in it, right? And certainly, we had anxiety around if it, back in those days, if the sheriff knocked on the door, he doesn't know what to do, we don't know what to do, we think we're doing it right, etc. Now, there's total clarity on that, right? We have permits hanging on the wall, we have metric tags on everything, every 50-pound batch is tested, 66 different pesticides, parts per billion. So there's a lot of clarity. There's also a lot of rules. There's a lot of regulations. There's a lot of taxes. The pendulum kind of swung too far over on that point of view, but it also has put it on the table very plainly. Lots of conversation, lots of awareness of the benefits of cannabis is coming out, the tax revenue, the jobs that are created. We just saw an article yesterday that in Oregon, the pendulum's coming back a little bit to the middle. They're actually loosening some of the regulations. So, now between California, Colorado, Oregon, Washington, I don't know, we probably have 20 collective years, maybe more, of adult use, and everybody has seen nothing happen, right? Like, people were looking for that negative story. They were looking for they legalized cannabis and then,
sky's falling
goes through, but teen usage doesn't go up, car accidents don't go up, jobs get created, tax revenue gets generated, but nothing else happens, right? I mean, you have a couple people, maybe more people end up in the emergency room because they ate too many edibles, but what does that mean? Like, okay, sitting here in the corner for 3 hours until you feel better and you can go home, that's not really a problem, right? I mean, how many people have ended up in the hospital with alcohol poisoning? How many of them have not walked back out of there, right? Like, that's a problem. This is you overdid it a little bit, and that's the worst thing that's happened. And so now people realize that, and I think it's been a big deal moving the industry forward.
And even some of those stories about, being hospitalized for some edible, often it's a black market product. Or gray market product, not a regulated product.
Yeah, and so when you have labeling and dosage, there's a lot less of that. There may be more people using it for the first time, but that doesn't mean that it's causing that there's more of it happening, right? And the other thing I think people don't, underappreciate is when it's legal, if you think you need to go to the doctor, you do. When it's illegal, you're scared to go to the doctor and you don't, right? With cannabis, it doesn't really matter because there's, still, as far as I know, 0 reported deaths ever from cannabis. But with other drugs, and I think we should think about this in our broader drug policy, is if somebody thinks they need to go to the hospital, do you want them to be scared to do that? Or do you want them to do what they think they should do, right? So, roll another drug in place, and maybe you really should be going to the hospital, not trying to tough it out at home. And I think if you think about things from a harm reduction point of view, treating drugs in general as a health issue for those that it has a negative impact for, and a personal, freedom issue for the rest, is a whole lot better than treating it as a law enforcement issue.
Yeah, 100%. Couldn't agree more. I've been in the cannabis industry myself for about a decade at this point. And honestly, when I got in, it was very much for the opportunity, just kind of seeing this growing industry, wanting to jump in. And then as you get more invested in it, you learn about the harms of prohibition, you learn about the benefits of legalization. You have a real mission, to see this thing happen. And, we're all trying to push this thing forward and get it to a good place. And it's happening state by state. And as you mentioned, like the years of experience now is really proving that this is something that should be nationwide.
Yeah.
With your
for sure. I mean, I'm not going off on too much of a tangent, right? But I think cannabis is amazing. That's where my passion is. I think it's very clear that society with cannabis, a world with cannabis in it, is a better world, and that the drug war, which was never really a war on drugs, but was really a war on people, and specific brown and black-skinned people at that, was a bunch of bullshit, and we should get rid of it. But that, I think, is the leading indicator on the rest of things, right? Like, I mean, we're seeing decriminalization, we're seeing progress with psychedelics. Another thing that I think both can offer us a lot of benefit as a society, and that the prohibition against does a tremendous amount of harm that we can stop. But, like, there's places you can look. Portugal's one, Uruguay's one. I mean, you can even look at Oregon now, which just decriminalized personal possession of all drugs, right? Like, that is such a break from the way that we've done this last 50 years. And we're going to start seeing the data, and I think, especially if you look internationally, the data says that for most people, drug use is not a problem. For those people that it is a problem for, that's not a moral failing, it's a health issue. It should be treated with health services, not with law enforcement services, right? Like, if you want to reform policing, which I think broadly a lot of people do, the number one thing you could do is end the war on drugs and reduce the number of forced negative interactions with the police, and particularly, minority communities, which is where most of that reform needs to happen. So,
Exactly.
It seems pretty obvious to me, and I'm glad to see at least in a few pockets we're making progress.
Yeah, I definitely think we are. Sometimes it feels like a little too slow, but when you think about how far we've come in just a handful of years here, with anecdotes like Oregon, like you're mentioning, I think it does point in the right direction. So you've always been passionate about cannabis. Prior to being in the industry, you were in technology and product development. The tech industry had a very similar story to me. What drove the transition into the legal cannabis market?
Yeah, so in a lot of ways, not much transition. So I am a tech guy kind of by background and experience, but a cannabis lover by passion. But my perspective is that well done agriculture, which everything in cannabis starts with the plant, so it comes back at some form to growing the plant well, is done much better with technology. And precision agriculture is kind of the approach that we use. If you think about it is kind of odd, but I actually think about, every company, I'm a systems thinker by nature. Every company has at least one biological system in it. It's the people that are involved in it, right? Cannabis and agriculture more broadly happens to have two environmental biological systems in it, right? One is the people and the other is the plant. And you're always solving for the people because I think our employees are the number one asset that we have. And every morning when we wake up, we think about our customers we're trying to make happy, the employees we're trying to give a good home to so that they can do their work to make those customers happy. And then, the value that we can create for shareholders from that, right? So that's how we think. And so taking care of both our biological systems is the main focus, the priority of what we do. If you think of the plant, you can almost think of it as a little bit like a black box computer program, right? Like plants are not arbitrary, they're not random. If you figure out what you want from the plant, for us it's terpenes and cannabinoids and flavonoids and nose and structure, right? Like if you figure out what you want and you give the plant consistent inputs, it will give you that every time. It's not like if you give it the same thing, it doesn't just change its mind, right? So it's like a little computer program. Feed it what you want to get what you want, right? So now if you figure that out, now your goal is how can I give it what it wants for the desired result that I have as consistently as possible and then as efficiently as possible. And if there's two things that technology is good at, it is consistency and efficiency, right? So if we can bring those things together, of course, with the right team to understand the plant, then that's the best case scenario. So everything that we try and do is about amplifying our love for the plant, not diluting it, right? And so when we say we want to do craft at scale, that doesn't mean that we want to do a whole bunch of mids, right? What we want to do is we want to take what we would do if we had 6 personal plants that we were loving and then scale that up so that we can do it more efficiently and more consistently, right? So when you take technology is good, computers are good at, okay, this is what I want you to do for this plant. I want you to do it every time. I want you to do it every time on Sundays and 2 a.m. and the weekends and the holidays, right? Like that's the thing that the computer can do that's really hard to do when you're doing things by hand. And so putting those things together, I actually think is a perfect marriage and gives us a perspective that not a lot of people, at least in cannabis, have yet, and that will allow us to hit a quality, consistency, and cost that not many others will be able to compete with.
Thanks for joining CPG, the Cannabis Packaged Goods Podcast. For more information on Headset, visit headset.io.